Now, our next panel is about designing the future, and we are taking a human-centered approach for this. But we're not talking about design purely from an aesthetics point of view. We're talking about designing as a mindset. So it's the process, it's the competitive advantage you have when it comes to incorporating design into your events, right? With rising expectations, a lot of people have those expectations when it comes to the design process as well. So on this stage, we will be hearing about how a human-centered design process can elevate events, spaces, and experiences as well. And the next few individuals that are going to be taking the stage have just that experience. So in a few moments, we will be welcoming them up on stage. Please give it up for Mr. Daniel Boey, Fashion Director and Creative Curator, Daniel Boey Creatives. We also have Ms. Jamie Koh, who is the founder of Brass Lion Distillery, and Mr. Rene Tan, the co-founder of RT+Q Architects. This will be moderated by the wonderful Mr. Sanjay. Mr. Sanjay Seth, who's the Senior Vice President and Managing Director of Asia, Pacific and BCD Meetings and Events. Everyone's settled in, everyone's got their coffee. Sanjay, time's all yours.
Thank you very much. I see people still outside eating. You guys coming in? Because it's going to be an exciting panel, obviously. Look at this crowd right here. Daniel, Rene, Jamie, thank you once again. We've had a lovely time together, just talking, preparing for this session. No prepared answers, no prepared questions, but certainly a great time having lots of great gin at Brass Lion Distillery last week. Let's talk a little bit about our topic today. So designing the future, a human-centered approach. I promise this is the only time I'll be looking at my notes. Design thinking is not just a theoretical idea, but a practical method used to develop innovative solutions. At its root, it's a human-centered approach. It emphasizes users' needs, which is kind of a process of empathizing with users, defining the problem, ideating the potential solutions, prototyping those solutions, and testing them. It is a non-linear process. It encourages experimentation and learning from both successes and failures. So over the next 45 minutes or so, it's our intention to explore how design thinking drives innovations in the industries we represent: architecture, fashion, craft spirits, and meetings and events. As I mentioned, we had a chance to catch up last week whilst we sampled some fabulous gin. Despite the brief time that we spent together, we shared some interesting insights with each other, and I'd like to actually start, based on the insights, some questions that I do have. So let's start with you, Jamie, if I may. Ladies first. Could you please share with the audience here today how Brass Lion Distillery came to be? And we'd love to understand the problem you felt you were solving through the design thinking process in introducing your brand to Singapore and the world, understanding the competition that you face with gin in particular.
Hi, everyone. So I think Brass Lion, when we decided to create that brand, it really came from a space of need. I was running my own F&B venues. This was back in, well, I still run them, but this was many years ago. And I realized that people were actually craving and wanting to know more about craft spirits. I think back in the day, when you go out and drink, it's usually, I'll get a gin and tonic, let me get a vodka soda, doesn't matter whatever it is. But as we go through the years, you realize that, number one, you want to drink better because that affects how you feel the next day, of course. And number two, people were starting to care a little bit about what is this bottle, where is it from, what are the flavors behind it, what's the story behind it. And I think that kind of sparked my interest behind this whole industry. Besides that, I actually traveled the world and realizing that every country had a spirit to call their own. I traveled for a year and I went to many countries, and every country had something. And as a Singaporean, I just felt that it was a huge shame that Singaporeans didn't have anything like that. So I thought to myself, let's create a Singapore gin. And then the next question follows, right? What makes a gin Singaporean? So we can really delve into that. But I think that essentially was the idea of how I came to start Brass Lion.
And Singapore thanks you. Rene, you said something rather interesting when we were talking, which stayed with me. One of your mantras, if I can call it that, is to your young architects is, don't think like an architect. it feels both provocative to me and perhaps counterintuitive for a senior architect to be preaching this. So please tell us where this comes from and why do you dish out this advice?
Yeah, it's interesting you would bring that up again, but it's something that I think is important for being an architect. And that mantra, if you will, I think came from a variety of sources. One more personal, another one more industry and history related. Now the personal one, I always call myself an accidental architect in the sense that when I went to college, I actually wanted to be a pianist. So I entered college intending to be a music major. I eventually hurt my hand and started taking architecture classes and graduating a double major. And then I subsequently went on to do my Masters of Architecture in architecture. And, but the lessons that I learned in music school never actually left me. And on a more personal note, I think it informs a lot of what I do and how I think about architecture and design. And if nothing else, I think architects can actually learn from other disciplines and just not thinking like an architect. I've always joked with students, but I mean it rather seriously. I think the worst place to study architecture is the classroom of the architecture school. So one needs to look beyond the profession. And on a more historical note, I think the history of architecture has shown us that at some point, the architecture treasury of ideas would exhaust itself. When we had the Renaissance about 500 years back, I think people were going further back into history and trying to reinterpret ideas even from the Romans and the Greeks. And then more recently with postmodern architecture, again, architects look back again. So I realized there is this cyclic movement towards thinking about design. Yeah, so that's, I think, where that phrase, that thinking came from. Not thinking like an architect, ironic as it may sound.
Love it, love it. Daniel, I've got a question for you next, but before then, can I get everyone to give Daniel a hand? He just launched his own brand of hot culture yesterday. What was that?
It was last night.
Last night, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I'm sure you're going to be telling us a little bit about it. Daniel, call it a curse of our profession, but we can't enter a room or attend an occasion like a wedding, for example, without critiquing the space and the content and more. Hopefully, we just keep that in our minds and don't speak that out aloud. But in our conversation,
Yep.
whether it was designing a house, whether it was designing a gown or a spirit for that matter, one particular word kept coming up, and that was emotion. So share with the audience what part emotion plays in your design arc. And here, maybe let's take the curation of a fashion show as your example.
Sure. I think the word emotion is front and center of my entire design journey, right? If you talk about fashion, I totally agree with you that we shouldn't think like a fashion person. And what is a fashion person anyway? You know, if you look at what I do, I think I'm less of a fashion person. I'm more of an experiential architect. I design events. It's just that most of the events I happen to do center around fashion. But no matter what events I work on, whether it's a fashion event, whether it's the FinTech Festival that I had the privilege of working on, emotion is so important. How you feel when you get your invitation, how you feel the minute you park your car and walk into the venue, the kind of music you listen to, the mood, the design of the space. When you walk into it, what is the first thing you see? So if you've got that emotion right, half the battle is won. 3/4 of the battle was won, and you've got the audience's attention. It's like when I walked into your distillery, the first thing I saw was, oh, I can do a fashion show here, I can do a talk here, I love the bar, so I'm already sold. So I think emotion is very important in the design process. And the design process doesn't have to be a creative process. It could be something like when I worked on the FinTech Festival. It's a FinTech Festival, but you can make it sexy, you can make it fun, you can make it enjoyable. So the minute they walk in, you don't think finance. You think, okay, I want to be involved in this. I want to go for the keynotes. I want to go for the talks. Let's go into a sandbox and design sandboxes that make it enticing for people to go in, not just put seats on bumps on seats. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think emotion is so important.
Thank you. Jamie, let's talk about emotion when it comes to taste. Describe to us some of the gins that you produce, but really for me it's, how did you decide on that particular flavor? Because we tried a couple when we were at your distillery. And did any of the tastes come up with what you envisaged? I'm just curious about the whole design arc for you.
I think the first product that we created was the Singapore Dry Gin. And I think that was really the most difficult one to create because, as I said earlier, what makes a gin Singaporean? And for me, I had a very clear idea of what we wanted out of this first product. We are in a tropical country. It's very hot. We want something citrusy, something very refreshing. We didn't want to just blindly copy a style like the London Dry Gin, which obviously everyone is very familiar with. We knew that it had to be botanicals that we use in this part of the world to represent Asian spirits. Because if you look at foreign gins, which most of the gins in the world are foreign gins, they use a lot of foreign ingredients or ingredients native to that part of the world. And we wanted to give that sort of representation to use ingredients that people don't usually use in gin, right? So if you think of ingredients like your pomelo peel, your rojak flower, lemongrass, mandarin peel, these are things that we use and incorporate beautifully. So all of these separate, very different ingredients, all incorporated harmoniously into one product itself. And we hand peel all our peels, so giving that fresh burst of citrus. So I think that was what we envisioned for the Singapore Dry Gin. But we also wanted to introduce people to the world of gin, because when people think of gin, they usually just think of one style, right? That dry gin style. And we said, the world of gin is so vast. Obviously we make whiskey as well, right? But people always say, why do you make gin? I say, because gin allows you to be very creative. We have now the butterfly pea gin, which tells the whole Peranakan story behind it, right? It changes color, of course, but it's the floralness of it. It's a floral gin. We have a pahit, which is a spice gin, right? From colonial times, this gin started, and instead of using Angostura bitters, which is from Trinidad and Tobago, as they historically used, we make our own Singapore bitters from the traditional Chinese medicine shops, right? Featuring ingredients such as goji berries and red dates, superfoods, but we put them in our gin. And our own version of a slow gin, we use Sansa hawthorn, which we all know from our childhood, right? As a familiar childhood snack. So we want to create products that are very nostalgic, that makes you think a little bit, and redefining what a gin means to people.
Thank you. And the jasmine gin that we had, that was something else. Rene, you had a total of 3 guiding statements. Yeah, I captured all of that. One being not to think like an architect, you mentioned that. The second was also memorable for me, and a great example of non-linear thinking, right? Don't be afraid to put the right thing in the wrong place. Can you please unpack that statement for us?
Yes. I think that's a very important one, and I always believe in some balance in the approach towards things we do as architects or anything else. I think school always taught me at least, to always do the right things. But I think architecture being so complex, a profession as well as a phenomenon, requires more than just rational thinking. And I think practicing in land-scarce Singapore and having done about 200 houses here and counting, I think every moment in the creative act becomes rather precious, but because there is not so much we can do in a place like Singapore. So rather than to think more about architecture, I think sometimes we appeal to our counter-intuition. Not being afraid to put the right thing in the wrong place or vice versa. It's counterintuitive, really. And I think picking up from what has been said before, I think the emotional aspects towards design is important, and it's the thing that is very difficult to teach. So one needs to cultivate it, I think, to make it work, to make it interesting. And it's all about taking some risk in what we do as well. So for instance, don't be afraid to put the right thing in the wrong place. We have designed a bathroom where we put a window actually at the bottom on the floor of the shower. And it freaked out the clients because, of course, privacy was important. So we had a piece of glass. And after a while, they got used to it because I assured them that when you are showering with the water splattering all over, privacy was never going to be an issue. And it became a talking point for the house, and it made it interesting and unexpected. Because again, intuitions from my music past always fill me. As the great Arthur Rubinstein used to say, playing the piano, the act is always the same, but every time there is something different about it, whether it's the audience coughing, or whether the hall is too cold, or the lights bright, all that sort of contributes towards, I think, the emotional aspects of what we do as whether musicians or architects.
Love it. I think we were on our second gin when I caught this gem, and we started debating that. So for you, Daniel, in the sense of iteration, when we talk about how we do something and we keep changing it, get your MVP out and make it better. A hot topic at every Miss Universe pageant, where in one segment, contestants proudly appear in their national costumes. Singapore is always unique. What in your mind is the Singapore dress?
I think the word unique is a very nice way of describing our national costumes. But I think something like a national identity, a national gin, a Singapore gin, has to come from ground up. Your gin was created from the ground up, right? Look at what people are wearing. It doesn't come from a directive. Okay, what is the Singapore dress? Let's put Malay, Indian, and all the different cultures together in one outfit. That's not a Singapore dress, right? Let's plonk orchids on a dress. That's not a Singapore dress. It has to come from ground up. People have to accept it and start evolving. In fact, if you asked me what a Singapore identity is, we've got so many different tribes. You know, different people wear different costumes, take on different personas when they're on a weekend, they're at work, they are doing creative work. So let that evolve. And in a similar vein, you can't create culture and heritage from a directive. It has to evolve. You know, if you talk about ideas, Tommy Hilfiger, the fashion designer, said, your first idea is always the best. Don't overthink it. Use that idea and adapt it and evolve it, right? But the minute you start overthinking it, that's when a project, especially a creative project, is doomed to failure.
Brings to mind paying millions of dollars to a consultant to look at the name of something, and then they come back with, well, the original is the best. Thank you very much for that check. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. I did have another question here, and this brings us back to the distillery, Jamie. It's clear that your distillery is not simply a factory churning out spirits, right? So what did you want to achieve when you designed that physical space? Because I think we all had an emotive reaction to it when we were there. We loved it, of course, but what was in your mind when you were thinking about that space? And
so when we first started, conceptualize the distillery, actually the distilling license didn't even exist in Singapore, and it was a very, very long process towards figuring out how to get the license, who to get the license from, and all of that stuff. When we finally figured it out, they said that because we're in manufacturing, they wanted to lock us away in some food manufacturing zone somewhere near the borders of Malaysia to never be seen by people. And for me, that was really something that we definitely did not want. because I really wanted that experience of having people come into our brand home and experience the brand. And so that process of probably set us back another 2.5 years because we really had to find a space, go through the approvals, because in Singapore, it's very hard to find a space where you can not only manufacture, but you can people come in at the same time. But we really wanted to give people that experience of coming into a distillery, smelling our gin, our freshly peeled peels inside, and also being able to do the workshops, interact with the brand. We have a workshop where you can come in and make your own gin, and we've designed it to look like TCM shops where you have all your cabinets and drawers. You know, it's like kind of like Willy Wonka's factory, where you can select your own botanicals and then distill your own gin at the whole end of the whole experience. So I think, you know, for us, we really wanted to create that whole emotive experience. Not only do you get to try the products, but you understand the reasoning and the rationale behind what we're trying to do as a brand. And I think that's very, very important and powerful.
Well, we thank you for not settling for what the authorities suggested you should do. Rene, we talked about our favorite subject, sustainability. It's quite a crucial element. Agencies diligently incorporate into the creation of any experience these days. It's seen as a responsibility, obviously, but also expected both by end customers and event attendees. Is this also the expectation today with your clients? And tell us about this term that I heard, transcendental sustainability, which I find fascinating.
Yes, but before we get on to that question, I wish we had a few gins right here on the table. It would have enlivened the atmosphere even more, definitely.
I'm sure Dylan can make that happen.
But yes, sustainability. I think it's an important concept. It's an important phenomenon. It's an important activity that we all need to be aware of, and we need to practice it in some way. But I think there are a few ways to think about sustainability, and I've been telling my office as well as students. Essentially, to me, there are two ways of thinking about it. One is literal sustainability, which means we do things that we have been taught in school. We try to save on materials, recycle things, don't waste, readapt, reuse as much as possible in saving pretty much the physical things in this world that we inhabit. However, I think we can, as designers, and certainly I do think about it a lot, I think we can do even better if we think about sustainability in a, as Dylan mentioned, as Sanjay mentioned, in a transcendental sense. And what I mean is, I think sustaining something will only do it to a certain point, and we have to ask ourselves, what are we sustaining? It's no point just sustaining things for the hell of it, I think, because we need to put value and we need to think about how we can do even better. So sustaining a physical environment, I think, is only half the story. For us as architects, and this is actually learned through COVID, I think we need to sustain ourselves and the users of the architectural space. A very simple thing is we try to design with less dead ends. Why? Because yes, it's a little bit wasteful. Less dead ends meaning you can perhaps enter a space, a kitchen, for example, from the right or from the left. And we don't do it just because it's interesting, but I think it needs to make the clients and the users discover and rediscover and rediscover the actual architectural act, so that things become continuously meaningful and interesting to them. So this is a kind of sustainability that I think is a more human-centric approach to the idea, which, for lack of a better term, a transcendental one, going beyond just what we know about sustainability, which we can actually pretty much learn from school or practice within the profession. Because I've been thinking a lot actually about this fabulous theme, a human-centric approach towards design.
Lovely, thank you. We have a bunch of questions from the audience, and one actually fits perfectly, so I'm going to ask that because it was going to be a question that was next on my list. How has technology, and even though this individual was talking about AI specifically, might not have to be the focus, how has technology influenced your business, your product, or what you do? And I'll start with you, Jamie. I mean, AI can't taste the gin. Tell us how tech in any way or form has influenced what you do.
So in distilling, as you said, it's impossible to use AI. We still go in and we taste the gin every single batch, right? And 90% alcohol. But you know, I think there are certain elements that we try to incorporate in the sense of what we do. AI can predict trends. They can, you know, see what's going on around the world, what are the flavors that's trending, and that can kind of guide us towards where should we plan our next flavor, for example, what's our next product. So looking at trends and using AI for that is very useful. One thing that we also want to do is, you know, I think it's quite relevant, is experiences, right? And we had, as I mentioned earlier, we have this gin experience where you can go and make your own gin. It's very long, it's 3 hours, but it's very fun, you're drinking the whole time. But, you know, not everyone has 3 hours to spare. So, you know, we're developing something with AI, right? What's your desired gin flavor, like a gin quiz, right? So you put in your thing, it comes out, this is your gin recipe, and we'll blend, you can blend on the spot your flavor based on AI. And immediately, within 15 minutes, you get a gin based on your answers, and you get similarly a personalized label and everything. So a 15-minute experience with
Fantastic.
AI.
I think it's rude not to give 3 hours to that, but 15 minutes it is. How about for you, Rene?
Yeah, I think since AI came about, I think I always believe in some sense of balance towards what we do as architects. The balance may not be 50-50, it could be 80-20, so to speak. But I think in terms of technology, again, I do believe that while the world is advancing at such an incredible pace, especially within the last 30, 40 years, we need a certain kind of counter-intuition towards the whole phenomenon of building and design, especially if it's about architecture. I've not seen everything, but I think I've seen enough to think and feel that I think there's only so much technology can do for us, and emotions have to creep in at some point, depending on mood or even the weather, because I think to experience great architecture, to experience great space, or even experience great food or drinks or clothing, I think the emotion part is very important. And I don't know if AI will catch up with all those things, but I think for the moment, let technology and AI guide us and fulfill us to a certain extent, to the limit that it can. But at some point, counter-intuition and emotions need to come into place, because after all, it is about the feeling, about whether it's the space or the drink or the fashion that is important. Yeah.
So technology, not the absolute, keep pushing that as well. Daniel, I knew there was a pivotal time for you, right, when we came to technology that had a huge impact in terms of what you were doing. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think we're all familiar with the period when we were all on lockdown during COVID. And Singapore hosted the only and the biggest fashion show in the world, which was Louis Vuitton. And why did they pick us? Because we pivoted fast. We were able to understand what phygital was. Paris tried it. Okay, Paris, actually, you know what? Paris was the first to do it, right? But it was at the start of COVID. But we took that concept, we understood it, and this was done at the peak of lockdown, when you could only have 30 people in a room. We had 60 models, 60 dresses, hair, makeup. And a concept like that could only have been executed, one, during COVID, when the Art Science Museum had 0 visitors. But it also could have only come about because of technology. Because we harnessed the power of technology and we managed to make it work, and we ran the entire thing without even meeting face to face. The entire show, and it's not just a fashion show, the design process, the experiential process was all discussed via Zoom. And it was all created without having a team of people in a meeting room. So that's how we use technology. But it's also because I think that's why people love doing work with Singaporeans. We're adaptable, we're fast, and we make it happen, right? If you talk about AI and technology does play a part in my design process, but it doesn't kick off the design process. I use it, and when I say I use it, you've got to master AI. I use it to improve the process, but I always kick off with the human factor. AI can never replicate, as you've said, you both said, AI can never replicate the emotional aspect of your design process, but it can help you improve on it. I've used AI for my designing of prints, but I don't kick off with AI. I worked with, for example, this collection, I worked with the artist Sam Low, who came up with the concept. We took it, we used AI to improve on certain aspects. We used AI to create things that would otherwise take 6 months to create, right? But we don't let AI be the be-all and end-all of the design process. We use it to improve the process. But that human factor is very, very important. And you've got to master AI in order to make it work for you.
That's right. You mentioned Singapore, and people love working with Singapore. So I'm going to talk about, or rather I'd like to pivot to a comment from our distinguished speaker this morning, Ho Kwon Ping, right? And he mentioned gone or diminishing are the days when we look to the West as our northern light when it comes to values, but we also need to find inspiration to avoid mediocrity in Singapore and ensure that we don't end up as a secondary city. Whether it be architecture, fashion, or craft spirits, are we in a position to compete globally today? Or do we still need to lean towards the West for inspiration? Can we do it better? That's my question. Let's start with you, Daniel.
Absolutely. Okay, when I first started working in the UK, I asked my agent, why are you bringing this person from Singapore? And I started working in the UK in 1996, when if you're an Asian and you work in fashion, you've got to be Japanese. No one's heard of Singapore at that time. Right. And she said, because when we give you a concept, you come up with solutions, and you can do what we take 1 week to do in 1 day. So I think that's our strong point, that's our power, that's our superhuman power. But at the same time, we as Singaporeans have to believe in our own culture, right? Why does it take, for example, I talk about fashion. Why does it take Dries Van Noten to embrace ikat before we think ikat is sexy? Why does it take another designer to embrace batik before we think it's sexy? It's right, it's our playground, it's our creative factory. We have to believe in our own culture. But I think we can compete on the global level, and we are excellent at what we do.
Majula Singapura.
Absolutely.
Jamie.
I believe that we can do whatever we want to do, When we set out to make gin, we said we're going to make damn good gin, and our whole process is, handcrafted, as you've seen, and we really stand by our product, right? But, there's no use in us just believing that it's good. I think sometimes people need external recognition. So then we do the things that you're supposed to do. We go take part in International Spirit Awards, right? And I've never, for me, it's an award's an award, but we took part in some in the beginning, and then we stopped for a while. This year, we took part again after a very long time. And we won a Gold Outstanding Award. Only 8 gins in the world were awarded this, and we're now in the running to become world's best gin for this year.
Awesome.
So I think it shows that, Singaporeans, we can stand our own.
Yes.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
Thank you. And yeah, I think, besides the gin, many people don't know we made Singapore's first whiskey. And with whiskey, it was an experiment because no one's ever made whiskey in Singapore before. But we said, let's just age it in our climate, in our humidity, in our heat, and let's see how it turns out. And actually, it turns out that in Singapore, you can make very good whiskey with our perfect conditions. So, you can do anything you want.
Love it.
Yeah.
Rene.
Yeah, I think there are 2 answers to that one question. Whether or not we can compete globally, definitely a resounding yes. I think Singapore has a lot of talented people, whether it's in design, the creative industry, music, architecture. I think there is definitely a lot of talent in Singapore. So in short, sure, yes, we can compete globally. I've seen the works of my peers, and they are wonderful products of the architectural experience. And then the other thing about learning from the West, I think all of us, and me too, maybe because I was trained in the West, I think we're all very caught up about whether it's the West or the East, or whether it's the North or the South, and you can just go on. But while people are thinking, what can we do here, what can they do there, so on and so forth, we keep forgetting, I tell myself, that we should look for a common solution for the human condition, so to speak. What is it that everyone wants? And it's actually very simple in terms of design. A comfortable space, something nice to look at, comfortable, physical, emotionally, and I think, and a little bit of shelter and a bit of structure to hold things up. It's not about north or south or east or west, because these are just the common human-centric values that I think pervades a lot of architecture, and we should just focus on it. The great Roman architect Vitruvius already told us that 2,000 years ago. Venustas, beauty; firmitas, structure; and utilitas, which is practicality. So I think if we go by these principles, I think we will definitely continue to live in a better world. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
Right, it's time to end the session because
Now tell me,
happy
that
hour
is
starts now.
Now the discussion starts.
yes, and because you were kind enough to do that, I will defer to the last question we will take from the audience. We've
Thank
got
you.
4 minutes and 24 seconds left. We need about 2 minutes for that. Just kidding. As we look ahead, what key trends or disruptions, and let's disrupt this by first saying cheers, guys,
Cheers.
Yes.
Cheers.
and to you all. Oh, man, we should have started with that. As we look ahead, what key trends or disruptions will most influence how we design human-centric systems and experience? So, again, bring this back to what you do, and I think, Rene, we start with you. What are some of the key trends and disruptions that you think will affect you when it comes to design or human-centric thinking?
Yeah, I think in a word, flexibility. And I think it's a trend, if we want to call it a trend. I think it's something that we should keep in mind and try to design towards and design for. It took COVID to sort of shape my thinking also. Flexibility, spaces that are interchangeable, whether it's the dining room becoming the office or the bedroom that's becoming a baby's room, so on and so forth. I think designing for flexibility is important. So what that also means is don't over-design. Just let things be what it needs to be. Simple spaces, but it's simple as it may sound. It's a very difficult thing to achieve, especially in affluent Singapore, I feel. So I think the best lessons I learned from music school is don't over-conduct the orchestra. Or don't over-design. Just let things be what it needs to be, and I think we will come towards a more human-centric environment.
Thanks, Rene. Daniel.
Ditto. I think we have proven during COVID that we are a resilient lot, and we are very adaptable, right? We are so adaptable. That's why we managed to ride the COVID wave, and we've done amazing things during COVID. You know, people came to us to stage events because we were adaptable. So I think the Singapore brand that's our Singapore brand. And the Singapore brand has value, and we are sexy.
I like that. We started with you, Jamie, and we shall end today's session with you. What's your take on that?
Well, in this world, everything is changing. In the spirits world, people don't drink these days, so that's obviously, that's the trend, right?
Yep.
But, you mentioned adaptability. We always design for what people want. Whether they want to drink better, we're there. If they want to drink less, we're also there. will always be there. So I think, I'm flexible and I like to create new things. So whatever people want, whatever, the human-centric approach, right? Going back to that. And I think using that to guide us and making decisions along the way, because at the end of the day, we're a brand and we want to be that provider for what people are looking for at the end of the day, whether it's drinking whiskey, drinking good gin, drinking a bit less, So that's where we are.
Empathy to the end user or what they're looking for. Well, I say to those who want to drink less, there's more for us. So cheers. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
A wonderful panel. Thank you, and thank you for your attention. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Sanjay, Daniel,
And
Jamie, Rene. I'd like to invite you to maybe take a couple of steps forward, please, for a group photo together, perhaps. While we have all of you here, group photo, please. Everybody enjoying their drink. Why not? Why not? Fantastic. Just a couple of photos, maybe a few videos as well while we have everyone here. Well, cheers to a human-centric approach, ladies and gents. And thank you for your time. Thank you for being here and making SMF 2025 such a success so far. We certainly hope you're enjoying your time here with us since the morning. It's been a great day so far. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our panelists and of course to Sanjay for facilitating and moderating as well.